Meet Ray. Ray is 41 years old. For 11 straight years, he's worked at the same warehouse. 60-hour weeks whenever the schedule allows it. He's never been late, never turned down overtime when the bills were tight. His manager calls him dependable, the kind of employee every company says they want. But here's the strange part. Ray has worked harder every year, and somehow his financial life barely looks different from the day he started. So here's the question. How can two people work equally hard and end up in completely different financial positions? Because the answer isn't always effort. Sometimes it's what the effort is building, and sometimes it's what the effort isn't building. We can call this the effort illusion. The belief that if you simply work harder, eventually the money will catch up. It sounds fair, it sounds logical, and sometimes it even works. But here's the problem. Hard work can increase your income. It cannot guarantee wealth, because income and wealth are not the same thing. Ray had a coworker named Devin. Same warehouse, same manager, same starting position. For years, both men worked hard, but eventually, Devin started asking a different question. Not, how can I work more hours, but what problems here are valuable enough that people will pay more to have someone solve them? That question changed the direction of his effort. Devin noticed that inventory errors were costing the warehouse time and money. So he started learning the software behind the system. Not because he thought a certificate would magically make him rich, but because he understood something Ray didn't. A valuable skill can change the value of your future hours. The certificate wasn't passive income. It was leverage. It increased what Devin could potentially earn with the same 24 hours everyone else had. Ray used extra hours to earn more money. Devin used some extra hours to become worth more money. That's a subtle difference. But over 8 years, subtle differences compound. Ray eventually reached the ceiling of his role. Not because he stopped trying, because the role itself had a limit. He could become faster, more reliable, more experienced. But the company still had a range it was willing to pay for that position. Ray kept climbing. The ladder just wasn't getting any taller. This is where people misunderstand hard work. The lesson isn't stop working hard. The lesson is stop assuming that more effort inside the same system automatically creates a better outcome. Hard work matters. But hard work has to be connected to something that can grow. Most people begin with linear income. You work an hour, you get paid for the hour. You work another hour, you get paid again. That's not bad. It's how most careers begin. But there is a hard limit. You only have so many hours, and eventually your body gets tired, your week fills up, and your income hits the same ceiling your time does. Leverage changes the equation. A skill can increase the value of your future work. Technology can let one person reach thousands. A system can keep producing results without being rebuilt every day. Capital can be invested into productive assets. And ownership can allow you to benefit from growth you didn't personally perform hour by hour. That's the deeper shift. Not from hard work to no work, from effort that disappears to effort that leaves something behind. But there's another trap: busyness. Ray's calendar was always full. His phone was always ringing. His body was always tired. And because he was exhausted, he assumed he must be making progress. But exhaustion is not a financial measurement. A full calendar doesn't guarantee a growing bank account. And being busy doesn't automatically mean you're moving forward. His manager praised him. Ray is the hardest worker here. Ray loved hearing that. And why wouldn't he? But praise and financial progress are two different currencies. Being the most reliable person in a low-ceilinged role can make you incredibly valuable to your employer without making you wealthy. Then something even more dangerous happened. Hard work became part of Ray's identity. He wasn't just someone who worked hard. He became the guy who works harder than everyone else. So when someone suggested taking fewer overtime hours to learn something new, Ray's brain heard something completely different. It heard, "You're becoming lazy." And suddenly, the very trait that had helped him survive was making it harder to change. This creates a cruel loop. You work more because you need more money. Working more leaves you with less time and energy. Less time means fewer opportunities to learn. Fewer new skills mean fewer better opportunities. So you work even more. The solution becomes the prison. And this is important. Not everyone can simply work smarter. Some people are dealing with medical bills. Some are supporting families. Some are drowning in debt. Some live in places where better opportunities are genuinely scarce. The point isn't to blame people for being poor. The point is to recognize where choice exists, and where even a small amount of available energy can be redirected toward a better future. Ray finally decided to do something he'd never done. He tracked his time. Not to shame himself, to see reality. He discovered that even after accounting for work, sleep, family, and commuting, there were small pockets of time disappearing into mindless scrolling and television. Not 6 hours every day, but enough. An hour here, 40 minutes there, and suddenly, the problem wasn't that Ray had no time. It was that his available time had never been intentionally assigned. So Ray made his first shift. He didn't quit his job. He didn't gamble his savings. He didn't launch a business overnight. He simply reclaimed a few hours. Because escaping the effort illusion doesn't begin with destroying your current life. It begins with redirecting a small percentage of your effort. The second shift was choosing one skill. Not 10, not a dozen online courses. One. Something valuable. Something learnable. Something connected to a real problem. Ray chose inventory management systems. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't trending. But warehouses were already paying people to understand it. That made it useful. And useful is often more valuable than impressive. The first few weeks were frustrating. Ray struggled. The software felt confusing. He made mistakes. One night, he almost quit. Because this was the part nobody talks about. When you're exhausted, learning something new feels like failure. But Ray kept going. Not because he suddenly became more motivated, because he understood that discomfort was temporary, while staying in the same place could last another decade. The third shift was visibility. Ray had spent 11 years assuming someone would eventually notice how hard he worked. But reliability doesn't automatically create opportunity. So Ray started making his new skills visible. He told his supervisor what he was learning. He asked questions. He volunteered to help with inventory problems. He didn't brag. He simply made it easier for the right people to see what he could now do. And it didn't work immediately. The first opportunity went to someone else. Ray was disappointed. For a moment, he thought, see, none of this matters. But this time, something had changed. Ray no longer saw rejection as proof that he was stuck forever. He saw it as information. So he asked, what am I still missing? That question was different from, why doesn't anyone appreciate how hard I work? And that difference mattered. The fourth shift was recovery. This felt almost wrong to Ray. For years, every free hour had been treated as an opportunity to earn. But burnout has a hidden cost. When you're permanently exhausted, you don't just lose energy. You lose judgment, creativity, patience, the ability to learn. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do with an hour is protect it. Eventually, Ray made a decision that scared him. He cut back 2 hours of overtime. That meant less guaranteed money this month. It felt irresponsible. But those 2 hours were now doing something his overtime never had. They were increasing the value of his future. Ray wasn't working less because he wanted less. He was temporarily sacrificing a little income to increase his earning power. 14 months later, Ray got another opportunity. This time, he was ready. He transferred into an inventory systems role supporting multiple warehouse locations. His hours went down, his responsibilities changed, and for the first time in 11 years, his earning power was moving upward. Not because he had discovered a secret, not because he had suddenly become more hardworking, but because his effort had finally started building something that could compound. But here's where the story could easily go wrong. A higher income is not the same thing as wealth. Ray could earn more money and still stay broke. If every raise becomes a bigger apartment, a newer car, more subscriptions, and a more expensive lifestyle, then the numbers change. But the life doesn't. This is the second trap, lifestyle inflation. Real wealth requires another step. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you keep and what you own. The basic progression looks more like this: earn, keep, invest, own, compound. That's why working harder is only one part of the equation. If every extra dollar disappears, Your effort has increased your income, but not your wealth. So Ray made another change. He didn't try to look richer. He tried to create a gap between what he earned and what he spent. That gap became the raw material for his future. Because you can't invest money you never keep, and you can't build ownership with money that disappears the moment it arrives. The final shift was ownership. Ray slowly began building assets, not because he wanted to become a millionaire overnight, because he finally understood the difference between being paid for his time and owning something that could grow without requiring every hour of his life. This is where the game changes. You stop asking, "How much can I earn?" and start asking, "What can I own?" A year into owning small pieces of real assets, Ray noticed something strange. His money had started making money, even on days he didn't work. It wasn't much yet, a modest dividend, a small return. But for the first time in his life, dollars were arriving that had nothing to do with hours he'd traded for them. Ray and Devin still work in the same building. Same manager, same warehouse floor they started on 11 years ago. But the two men who once looked identical on paper are now living completely different financial lives, not because one of them finally worked harder than the other, but because one of them finally worked towards something that could grow. Here's what's important. Ray didn't become a different person. He didn't stop being reliable. He didn't stop showing up early or staying late when it genuinely mattered. Hard work never left his life. It simply stopped being the only tool in it. The uncomfortable truth is this. Millions of people are doing exactly what Ray did for 11 years, showing up, working hard, trusting that effort alone will eventually be enough. For some of them, it will be. For most, it quietly won't. Not because they didn't try hard enough, but because trying hard was never actually the missing variable. If any part of Ray's story feels familiar, the starting point isn't a dramatic life change. It's one honest audit of where the hours actually go. One skill chosen deliberately. One conversation made visible. 1 hour of recovery protected on purpose. And eventually, one gap created between what comes in and what goes out. So here's the question worth sitting with. Not how much harder can I possibly work? Because for people like Ray, that answer was already at its limit years ago. The real question is simpler. Where is all that hard work actually being pointed? And is there any part of it, even a small part, that could start building something that outlasts the hour it took to earn it? Working hard was never the mistake. It never will be. The mistake is assuming hard work alone was ever supposed to be enough on its own. The moment that assumption finally gets questioned is usually the exact moment everything quietly starts to change.